Hi everyone, I am Heather, and I want to welcome you to Magnificent Authors Podcast, brought to you by Magnificent Mamas. This is the show where we'll celebrate the magic of storytelling and the power of words. I'm your host, Heather, and each week I'll be sitting down with incredible authors from all walks of life to explore their creative journeys, uncover their writing secrets, and delve into worlds they create. Whether you are an aspiring writer, a passionate reader, or simply curious about the minds behind your favorite books, this is the podcast for you. So grab a cozy blanket, pour yourself a cup of tea, and get ready to be inspired by the magnificent authors who join us. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, Heather here with Magnificent Mamas and Magnificent Authors Podcast. We are joined here today with author Don Hughes. Don, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Don Hughes. I have written a book called The Mutt for Me, A Beautiful Transformation from Project Dog to Man's Best Friend. It was released in September, and it's a story about my dog Barbie that I adopted from our local county animal shelter.
Oh, that's sweet. What age range is it geared towards?
All ages.
All ages? That's awesome. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about your book?
Sure. I was volunteering at our county animal shelter. I was doing adoption counseling, helping people find the right dog or cat for them. And the time they had a program called Speed Dating for Dogs.
Oh.
Where they would take a dog, there'd be a volunteer in one of the meet and greet rooms. And then another volunteer would run the dog from its kennel into the meet and greet room, where the waiting volunteer would interact with the dog, take pictures, take some notes, take some videos. It was a way for the dog to get out of its kennel and socialize with a human being.
Yeah.
And for the volunteer to, in essence, promote the dog on social media, on Facebook and so forth.
Yeah.
And Andrea, the volunteer that night that posted about Barbie, Barbie was visibly shaking in her kennel, or in the room. She was just so scared. And being in a shelter, particularly a public shelter like the county, where they have probably 500 dogs and 50 cats.
Yeah.
It can be a scary place. All the noises and confusion and it's scary for a dog. And
I bet.
Barbie had been at the shelter for 3 months at this point, and she'd been turned in by someone who said they had picked her up as a stray. Sometimes that's just the owner trying to turn the dog in and not have to pay the fee.
Yeah.
But we don't know in this case. And she had deteriorated during the 3 months that she'd been in the shelter. And I've been volunteering for a couple of years, and it was the most rewarding and heartbreaking thing that I've ever done. It made me often question my faith in humanity and restore it sometimes in the same day. So I had seen a lot of hard luck stories, and I had, there've been a lot of great dogs that I had worked with over the years. And there wasn't a time when I went out there that I didn't see 5 dogs I wanted to take home.
Yeah, I don't know if I could work in a place like that. I'd want to bring all the animals home.
Yeah. And I always reminded myself that, Don, you're working, you're busy at work, you travel for work, you don't have time to take care of a dog. And given the amount of travel that you do, it wouldn't be fair to the dog. And for some reason, Barbie's video just touched something different in me. And I saw that and I said, I need to do something.
Yeah.
And I'd seen plenty of scared dogs before, and dogs that were in bad shape. And so this should have been no different than all of the others, but for some reason it was. And I had a job where I was working out of my house, and my boss worked out of her home outside of Baltimore. So this was March, so there was either a 2 or 3 hour time difference. And so I thought, well, okay, at the end of the day for me at 4 o'clock, it would be 6 or 7 o'clock for her, and the chances of her calling me would be pretty slim.
Yeah.
So I drove out there, ran into a friend, volunteer Marcia, who had worked with the project dogs a lot. And I asked her about Barbie, and she looked at me kind of strange, like, okay, what do you want to know? You only come in on Saturday and Sundays. Why are you here on a Monday?
Yeah.
And so we went back to her kennel, and she was hiding. The way the kennels are set up, there's an inside part. There's a door, a guillotine door that separates the inside part from the outside part of the kennel, so that the dog, if they want to be outside, they can go outside. Or if they're cleaning the inside part of the kennel, they can shoo them in to the outside and close the door.
Yeah.
So she was in the far back corner of the outside portion of the kennel, curled up into a tight ball, hoping nobody would notice. So we had to go in the kennel, crawl through the guillotine door. So the opening was not big. I'm tall.
Yeah.
So past the dog poop. And I put my leash on her, and she came out okay from her kennel. And with most of the dogs in a shelter, particularly a public shelter, they're so excited to be out of their kennel that they just bolt.
Yeah.
Like they're going to pull your arm out of your socket.
And she didn't do that.
She did not do that. She walked pretty good. She walked very nicely on the leash, and we walked around the grounds for a bit, and then I took her into one of the inside meet and greet rooms just to judge how things are going. Yeah. And again, we got into the room, and she immediately curled up again into that tight ball of, ooh, I don't like it here. I don't know who this person is. And she would let me touch her, but it was clear that she didn't like it.
She was scared.
She was scared. And so we spent some time in the room, no real interaction. And I took her back and put her in a kennel. Driving home, I called a dear friend who got me into the world of animal rescue, because she had 5 dogs when we were dating, and we've stayed friends even after the dating relationship ended. And she said, "Well, how did it go?" I said, "Well, it went okay. She's afraid of virtually everything, especially men, which creates a big obvious problem."
Yeah.
And I said, she walked well on the leash, but there was no real interaction. She didn't look at me. She didn't respond to either my touch or my voice or anything. I said, I just don't know. What are you going to do? I said, well, I think I'm going to go back out again in a couple of days. And so I went back out on Thursday, and we had a longer walk. Still, I have to crawl through the guillotine door to go get her, and there's no recognition that we've met before. We took a longer walk, and including outside the grounds into the parking lot and outside, just to see how she would do. And she did fine. We did walk past Marcia, the original volunteer that I had talked to and that had worked with Barbie. And there was a tail wag when she saw Marcia. So I thought,
So she shows a little bit.
She shows a little bit, but still no interaction between the two of us, even in the meet and greet room. And it's like a date that has gone just okay.
Yeah, I get that.
Not so bad that, you're clearly not a match, but not love at first sight.
Yeah.
And so I talked to Marcia some more about all of her problems, and I decided, I still was really torn about what to do. There are so many red flags. And I decided, well, okay, let's take her on a day foster. Okay. See how she does outside the shelter. And, the shelter really encourages volunteers to do day fosters, to get the dog out into a different environment, in a more calm environment.
Yeah, for sure.
And to see different things, different smells, and it's really good for the dog. And so again, it went okay. I brought her home. She walked around the house, and she seemed relatively calm. We went in the backyard, and we walked in the backyard. She sniffed everything, and the cactus and the bushes, and she seemed to be doing okay. And we took a walk through the neighborhood. She did fine, and we went back in the house, and she even laid down.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not seeing any new red flags, but there's still a big physical distance that she's keeping when I'm not walking her between the two of us. And I took her back, and I told the staff, I said, look, if you can find someone to adopt her, great. Or if you can find a foster or a rescue that will take her and work with her, great. But if you're going to put her on the euthanasia list, then I need you to call me. And, and they said, okay. And so the original plan was, I had a business trip. This was about the middle of March. I had a business trip at the end of March, but then not another trip until the end of May. I thought, if I get past the business trip, then we can spend more time together, maybe overnight. And, this will be a longer relationship before we jump into marriage. And that was the plan. But man plans, God laughs.
Yeah.
And I got a call from them the middle of the week, I think Wednesday or Thursday, that she has continued to deteriorate in her kennel. She is completely unadoptable at this point. There's no foster, there's no rescue, there's nobody that's going to step up and save this girl. And it was now put up or shut up time. And if I said no, she dies on Monday. And I've, in professionally, I've made big decisions before that affect people's lives, but this is the first life and death decision. And, Jenny and I talked about it at length, and I spent a fairly sleepless night, and I finally decided, you know what? Yes, there's all these problems. There's all these questions. What do I do with her when I travel? What am I going to do about this? And what about this? And what about this? And sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and trust that everything's going to work out. And that's what I did. So I adopted Barbie. I've now had her 5 years.
Oh.
We had a very long and difficult period of adjustment and learning to communicate with each other. house training was just a complete disaster.
That's so sad, but that happens.
Well, and they didn't know anything about her backstory, but they figured she'd never been inside of a house before. So wherever she was before, it didn't matter. She was probably outside most of the time, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
If the woman who turned her in really picked her up as a stray, if you're out on the street, if you got to go, you just go.
Mm-hmm.
Same in the shelter. And now you're in a house for the first time.
And you got to be potty trained.
You got to be potty trained. You don't know what to do. And then I hadn't had a dog of my own since I was 4 or 5. And I don't remember having to take care of Queenie when I was 4 or 5.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I'd helped out taking care of Jenny's dogs when we were together, but she was always there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were already trained. This was completely different. I had no idea what I was doing. When I was volunteering, I would come home and write Jenny an email about what had happened during my shift. And you take dogs and cats, the general public, the personalities at the shelter. And some of the stories I would write were really funny. Some of them were heartbreaking. And she really liked them and kept encouraging me to do something with the stories. And of course, after I adopted Barbie, I continued to write and email Jenny because it was, an outlet for me, particularly when things were not going well.
You need that. You need that somebody to talk to and vent to and bounce ideas off of on any part of life.
Yes. It was a lifesaver for me. So she kept encouraging me to do something with my emails, with the stories. So for Christmas, I cut and pasted all of them, put them into a Word document, but you can't call that a book, right? Because that's just a bunch of emails. So I had to structure a story around it, talking about my upbringing and past and present. I thought I was a cat person for a long time. So I gave her the stories. I went to the local Kinko's and had them printed out into a 3-ring binder and gave it to Jenny for Christmas. I gave it to my mom. Jenny gave it to her mom, and everybody loved it. And I kind of discounted my mom liking it because, she's mom and, she's required under the contract to like everything that your kid does.
Usually.
Yeah. So I kept working on the stories, and they included Barbie and stories about my rescue or shelter days, and added and subtracted and shared it with some additional people. And they kept telling me, well, Don, we think you may really have something here. And I thought, no, these are just a bunch of stories. This isn't a book. Tom Clancy writes books. John Grisham writes books, but I kept working on it, and finally it got to the point I took it as far as I could.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it was time to have somebody outside the family and friends circle read it and say, yes, this is good. No, it's not. And I started researching publishing, which I knew nothing about. I had a friend who had self-published a book, a novel. So I had some idea what she went through. But, it was fine. Navigating the publishing world was a nightmare.
It's tremendous.
It is. And, it's traditional publishing versus self-publishing. And I found there were hybrid publishers and vanity press and on and on. I talked to so many different varieties of publishers outside of traditional publishing. I quickly realized they were not going to be interested in me. I was not famous. I was not a celebrity. I didn't have some major following. So then it was self-publishing or hybrid publishing. And every publisher, the website that I visited was very slick. They all look wonderful, and they all have glowing testimonials from authors they've worked with. And it's like, where do I go? And finally, you have to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And on one publisher, hybrid publisher's website, they said, we love talking to authors. Call us. And I thought, okay, this is for me. So I cold called them one day, I think it was late on a Friday, and explained who I was, what I was looking for. And they put me through to someone.
Nice.
And she spent 30 minutes on the phone with me explaining their services, what they do, and how it works. And she asked about my manuscript. And she said, well, that sounds very interesting. And I said, I've never published before. She says, we work with first-time authors.
That's important to find people that are willing to do that.
And she said, we don't accept every manuscript that's submitted to us, which was a big green flag for me. I was like, okay, that takes, and at least for me, that took them out of the vanity press danger zone. And I continued researching. I researched them, and I got glowing reviews. Their reputation was pricey but worth it. And so I finally decided to upload the manuscript online. 2 weeks later, I got an email from them in September, and it was still hot in those days. And I thought, I think I'm going to take Barbie for our morning walk, and I'll come back and deal with rejection when we're done.
Yeah.
And much to my surprise, they said the team has evaluated it, and we'd be interested in talking to you about, moving forward if you would like. And, would you be available on this day or this day at this time? If you are, let us know. We'll set up the appointment and talk about next steps. And I had to put my tablet down and going, oh my God, now what do I do?
That's awesome, though. That's so exciting.
Yeah, so I set up the call, and we had a great conversation. And he said, well, Don, what's your plan? And I said, Danny, to be honest, I don't have a plan. I never expected to get this far. I said, I'm sure many of the authors that submit to you guys have it all laid out exactly what they want to do and what they need and so forth. I said, I don't. He said, not a problem. We'll have someone do a deep dive on your manuscript and come back with a proposal, and we'll talk in 2 weeks. They did. One of the things that they found was it was all telling, and there was no showing. I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know there was a difference between telling and showing.
Yeah.
So it worked out. They put together a great editorial team that turned a very rough manuscript into an actual book called The Mutt for Me. This is the cover.
Oh, I like
that. We launched in September. It's an Amazon bestseller.
That's so awesome.
The National Nonfiction Book Awards gave us a gold medal, which really took me by surprise. We have 31 5-star reviews on Amazon. And I've just been stunned at the response and how well it's gone. And I never expected any of this.
Well, you have done amazing on many levels, not just the publishing of your book and getting such positive feedback, but just also like adopting her and giving her a chance. I love animals, so that like touches my heart so much. You've done wonderful.
People who knew her at the shelter and see her now say she is a completely different dog.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure it's a good change, not, a negative. And it's we need more people like you in the world.
Thank you. It was the best decision I ever made.
That's awesome. That's so special. And she's so lucky to have you in her life.
Well, she has done as much for me as I have done for her, because my father had died about 18 months before I met Barbie. Mm-hmm. So she has been a big help in helping me deal with the grieving process and losing my dad, and my mom died 9 months, October of 23. So she's been, October of 22. So she's been a big help to me. And part of the premise of the book is who saved who. And in my experience, the answer is not quite as simple or as obvious as you might think it is.
You both saved each other.
Yes, very much so.
We all need something like that in our life sometimes, I feel like. That's awesome. So the day this podcast airs, we will be sharing links to any socials or Amazon, that type of thing, so everyone knows where to check out your book. You have moved me beyond words, honestly. Your story is just, it touches my heart. And I want to thank you for sharing with us today. If you have anything else you want to add before we close, you can. Like I said, your story really touched my heart.
I think the only thing I would close with is adopt, don't shop. There are great dogs at the shelter and cats. Not all of them are as behaviorally challenged as Barbie, but don't overlook the challenging ones. There is a great dog inside that fear just waiting to come out. And if you give them a chance, the reward is tremendous.
I bet. I agree. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing. I can't even put into words right now, but I definitely plan to check out your book.
Thank you. When will the podcast air, do you think?
It should be in May.
Okay.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I will send an email out and let you know.
Okay. And I can share the link on social media as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome. And that's a wrap on another episode of Magnificent Authors Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to share another inspiring conversation with a talented author. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Magnificent Authors Podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming conversations with amazing writers. And be sure to check out Magnificent Mamas on our website, which is www.magnificentmamas.us, or on our Facebook page for more inspiring content from incredible authors. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. What resonated with you the most? Head over to Facebook or leave a comment on our website and let me know. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and keep those imaginations soaring.